Well, what in the world happened at the 2019 145th Kentucky Derby? Barry Abrams from the In the Gate podcast, ESPN.com. He joins us now to kind of give our listeners a quick overview of something that we've never seen, Barry. The horse that finished first did not win the race.
You're starting to sound like Vince Lombardi. What the hell's going on around here? Well, this happens in horse racing every single day, really. I mean, it just has never happened in the Kentucky Derby, but, you know, Maximum Security, the horse that was in front on the final turn, was spooked by something, whether it was a crowd noise or a flashbulb or the mud on the track, whatever it was, he was spooked and shied away from the inside and veered to his right a little bit, right into the path of the oncoming War of Will. And they were very, very close to clipping heels, and it could have been a catastrophic result. And so even though it wasn't the fault of the rider, Luis Saez, he was trying to straighten the horse out, but it happened nonetheless. And the way the rule governing disqualifications is interpreted here in the United States, and there is a different interpretation in most of the world, but the way it's interpreted here is if there is interference that could potentially affect the outcome of the race, then you have to take the offending horse down. And even if you don't think they would have passed him, the other horses who were affected might have passed each other. So the outcome of the race, maybe not the winner, still might have been affected. Then you have to make the call that they made. There's no other call to make.
So you think the call was the right call?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about this, okay? Let's say now you're another rider, and they let the race stand. Well, if Maximum Security could get away with it, next time I'm going to try it on purpose to slice and dice and block the path of an oncoming horse. You can't do that. The number one thing in this sport is the safety of the horses and the riders. I mean, you see that kind of blocking in NASCAR, and it happened today, you know, in Dover. But if you tear up a race car, you tear up a race car and you rebuild it. And the drivers are sitting in carefully constructed cockpits that are designed for their safety. What does a jockey have? A flak jacket and a helmet. And you can't rebuild a horse, God forbid. So this is the only thing you can do to protect the riders and the horses themselves, is to make sure that this sort of thing is not legislated as being legitimate.
Barry Abrams, ESPN's In the Gate podcast. Now, it's the biggest wagering race in North America, so the stakes are very high. What does this mean for these horses moving forward?
Horses don't usually run as often as the Triple Crown schedule demands. The schedule was set most recently in 1969 when horses could run every 2 weeks. But now they run every 4, 6, 8 weeks apart. So unless you have that pull of history, as Country House now does, the winner of the race, most horses are not going on to the Preakness. And Gary West, the owner of Maximum Security, said he's not running in the Preakness. That's not being done under protest. That's just because he didn't win the Derby, and there's no reason to run him back in 2 weeks. But what it means now, I mean, there are a couple of Derby horses that probably will go on. Code of Honor is one of them, the horse that also was briefly affected by the bumping on the inside, and he might have been the winner were it not for that. But his trainer, Shug McGahee, said that he has no intention of running him in the Belmont. It's too long a race for him. So he said, I'll run him in the Preakness, and then I'll give him a break. And the same may be true of Improbable for Bob Baffert, who much prefers running in Maryland than in New York. So he probably will also run the Preakness and then take a break. War of Will, the horse that was affected most often in that bumping, he may also run the Preakness and then get a break. But most of the runners in the Preakness will be newcomers, horses either that didn't qualify for the Derby or who were late bloomers to begin with, and so their trainers just put them on totally different trajectories and didn't even think about the Derby. And there are a couple of those who have credentials, too, like a horse named Always Mining, who has won 6 in a row. In races a bit less rigorous than the Derby preps, but 6 in a row means he's got some credentials and he's coming in with confidence. So there's definitely a field of horses that have credentials that Country House will have to face if he wants to complete the Triple Crown.
Yeah, now the winner of the race originally, right, was moved to 17th place, right?
Right. The way the rule is,
Maximum Security got moved
horses,
from first place to 17th place monetarily, I guess. That comes into effect.
right, because the two horses that lodged the two jockeys of the horses who lodged the objections, the way the rule is, if you take the horse down, the offending horse, Maximum Security, you have to put him behind the horse that finished lowest of those whose jockeys filed objections. And Bodie Express was the lowest one, so Maximum Security has to be put behind him.
So Maximum Security is going to appeal this. Does he have any shot here?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Gary and Mary West, the owners of this horse, are distraught. They're lovely people. They've been on my show before. Heck, a couple of years ago, we did an entire podcast, an entire In the Gate podcast on how to interpret the rules of disqualification. We did a whole show about this. But they basically have reshaped their operation in recent years, and they are among the most deeply entrenched, deeply committed owners in the sport. They care about winning the Kentucky Derby. They don't anymore have horses that run on grass. They don't have horses that run short-distance sprints on dirt. They have horses who run long distance on dirt for the purpose of winning the Kentucky Derby. So you can imagine, with all of that time, money, and energy that they have put into that, how distraught they are.
Barry Abrams, it's the In the Gate podcast, where I'm sure that you guys will be discussing this at much more length than this, but you just gave us the Cliff Notes version of what the heck happened the other day, and I know it was the most money, $165 million was bet on the Derby, a record, and a 65-1 shot ends up winning that thing. I know a lot of people ripped up their tickets and then had to go try to find them. It was a bizarre day. Was it a good day, though, for horse racing?
Well, that's the thing that I cannot get over, and I'm glad you made that point. I was reading this morning, it's a black mark for the sport. What, are you kidding me? The only black mark for this sport would have been had there been a catastrophic accident. And if there had been basically two sets of rules, one for the Derby and one for every other race. You can't have that. The only part of this that I wish had been done differently, and I get it, is that you can never talk to the officials in any team sport. You couldn't talk to the referee who made the non-pass interference call in the NFC Championship game. And you couldn't talk to the chief state steward here who made the ruling on Maximum Security. Now, she did make a statement to the media in the press room after the race, but didn't take any questions. This sport, more so than most, is in desperate need of a transparency infusion, something to build confidence that the races are conducted legitimately and fairly and for the benefit of the horse and rider. If she had taken questions from the media, particularly people whose eyes are not on racing all the time, that would have gone a long way towards that. I get it. No horse racing, which is very much a status quo behind the times business, could have actually taken the lead and come out smelling like a rose. I wish that had happened. Other than that, there's no other way this all could have gone down.
Barry Abrams, the In the Gate podcast. I'm sure he'll have plenty more on this. And he was kind enough to join us here on short notice. A different kind of Derby. The In the Gate podcast is up right now at ESPN.com. Barry, thank you so much for jumping back on, pal.
Anytime, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
All right, Barry Abrams, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.